So Stevie, what do you think? Should we kick off?
I think so, Jazz.
Perfect. Great. So thank you all so much for joining us today and taking time out of your evening to listen in and be part of this webinar. We are very excited to be hosting it. We've had a lot of sign-ups and I'm currently sitting here with not one, but two fans on me. So we are really grateful for you joining us in the extremely hot weather. I'm Jazz Stothart and I'm delighted to be hosting this evening's event, which is all about supporting your teen through school anxiety, one of the biggest worries amongst young people today. I'm one of the co-founders of Luna, which is a digital health and wellbeing app for tween and teens as they go through adolescence, but also a co-pilot for parents too, as we know this is a very, very hard stage to navigate for you also. You can think of Luna like a big sister in your pocket. And I am delighted to be joined by Stevie, who works for YoungMinds, which is an incredible charity working with young people and their parents and carers who are struggling with their mental health. Stevie, a quick intro from you.
Thanks, Jazz. So yeah, hi everyone. So pleased to be with you all on this very hot evening. So as just said, my name's Stevie. I've been at YoungMinds for the past 8 years, and I started off as a volunteer on our parent helpline service, and now very lucky to be a manager of the service, overseeing all of our helpline delivery, as well as our community engagement programme, which is really striving to connect with families from communities that we currently underserve and support on our parent and carer services.
Amazing, thanks Stevie. So we want to keep this session as insightful, full of practical tips as possible. So what we want to do is share insights taken from our platform, Luna, from the Young Minds helpline as well, and then offer practical tips for parents to help you guide your young people as they navigate school with any anxiety and worries that they might have. Before we kick off, just a quick note to say that this webinar is being recorded, but I'll make sure that we turn it off just before the Q&A and that we circulate the webinar as well afterwards for those who might want to recap or those who might have missed this as well. We will also have Q&A at the end. We're going to leave plenty of time for that. So feel free to add your questions into the Q&A box, which you should see at the bottom of the screen throughout the webinar. It's completely anonymous and we will do our best to address them at the end of the webinar. Please just make sure you don't leave any identifying information on there so that we can answer your questions freely and openly as well. So as I mentioned, we are going to give you some insights from our platform Luna, and so we thought it would be worth just giving you a short overview so you know where these insights are coming from. So the Luna app is co-created with NHS medical professionals, and our platform covers mental health, friendships, relationships, body image, school confidence, and so much more, because we know how important all of these topics are to teens and also to parents during adolescence. Our platform is for teenagers themselves to use, and what they can do is learn on all the topics that we talked about above through expert curated content, so videos, articles, and quizzes. They can ask anonymous questions and get an expert-backed response. They can track their moods and their periods if they have one to start understanding their cycles, their hormones, and to start forming healthy habits with their bodies. And they can basically join a safe community of 250,000 other teens who are going through this life stage with them. And I decided to leave the corporate career and create Luna because I just wish this platform existed when I was younger. And when I looked at the market today, I just couldn't believe that it didn't exist. And whilst I did have a very open relationship with my mum, I know that she didn't always have the answers or didn't always know what to say to me. And do you know what? At times there were just times where I just didn't really want to ask her these questions. And for that reason, we built the Luna app, which is a safe, non-judgmental space for teens to go and ask and to learn, and basically to be another trusted source for teens to go to when they might have any questions or any worries about their health and well-being. We're not like social media. Young people cannot interact with each other. It's just them and Luna. There's no giving each other advice, only Luna's experts. And where we can't help them because we are just an app, we will signpost to amazing charities and resources like YoungMinds. And this means that young people are safe and only accessing reliable, trusted information and guidance. So the most popular topics that teens are engaging with on Luna are mental health, with school being a huge, huge piece of that, confidence and motivation, and also periods as well. So that's a bit about Luna, and that hopefully gives you a background as to where some of our insights are coming from. But now over to Stevie to tell you a bit more about YoungMinds.
So in terms of who we are at YoungMinds, we are a national charity. All across the UK we're available. And we really exist because we want to see a society where no young person feels alone with their mental health. So everything we do, whether that's on our parent helpline, where we're equipping parents and carers with advice and guidance, whether it's on our youth programmes, where we're co-creating solutions, gaining insights, developing content, or right through to our campaigning and sort of external affairs, we're really calling for the government to make systemic changes to better provide and support young people's mental health. So everything we do is really, our overall goal is so that no young person feels alone when they're struggling, when they feel that they're in need of support. And as I said, the ways that we do that for our young people, it's really centred around digital content. So we have our website that is full of advice and guides that are written by and for young people. We've got a whole blog series so that young people continuously share their stories with us, so that we can help less other young people feel alone because they feel that they're represented and can see themselves there. And we also have a very growing social media platform where we call it Our Front Door, where we're engaging with lots of young people, giving advice and content, so they really know that they can turn to us for support and other agencies out there. And also we really exist, as I said, we have a parent helpline. So we really want to equip adults in the young people's lives with knowledge, experience, advice, guidance, so that they know how to respond if a young person is struggling. They know how to maybe have that conversation, spot the signs, and actually know where to go if they need to ask for a bit more help. And so in terms of school anxiety, I think lots of us on the call today might have some experience, whether that's directly with your young person, a friend, family, relative. School anxiety is prevalent and it's ever growing. We've really noticed this across our parent and carer services, so much so that since the pandemic, school-based problems have been repeatedly in our top 5 concerns, whereas before the pandemic, these weren't seen sometimes in our top 10. So I think it really shows a dramatic shift for young people and how they've not only found it really difficult maybe to reintegrate in the world after COVID and lockdowns, but also it's a real stark reminder, I think, of how the education system really isn't meeting a lot of young people's needs out there. And so last year, across our helpline services, over 7% of all of our conversations related to emotionally based school avoidance. You might hear this called EBSA or school refusal. However, we don't like the term school refusal because it really implies that young people are actively choosing or not wanting to go to school, when actually, in the majority of situations, they're just not well enough to go. And over 5% related to school-based anxiety. And what we're seeing year on year is a really growing and quite alarming trend that more young people are not only absent from school, but absent from school over a much longer period of time. So back in 22-23, over 22% of all students were persistently absent. But what we know is that, or what we believe to know, is that actually this is growing, and that figure, if we looked at that today, is likely to be much higher. And in terms of what we hear across our helpline, so anxiety, and I think it's always going to be at that #1 top spot. It always has been ever since I've been around. But actually, in our most recent annual evaluation, over 2/3 of parents and carers reported that their young person struggles with things like stress and anxiety. And actually, this can be shown and presented in lots of different ways. It might be school-based anxiety like we're talking about today, but things like social anxiety, health anxiety, generalized anxiety, all of those things come up an awful lot for us. Because young people are really struggling to access help when they need it, we've also seen a growing rate of anger and aggression related concerns and conversations where young people are really resulting maybe in using kind of anger behaviour as a way to express and articulate the difficult things that are going on for them. As I said before, school-based problems often sits around third, and what we're also seeing in line with NHS and lots of other data out there is the kind of growing rate of neurodivergence in terms of young people being diagnosed with things like ADHD and ASD. And finally, low mood and depression. That is something that comes up an awful lot for us. And again, we can really see some seasonal patterns around that. So we see a very clear spike around the time children begin secondary school and during exam periods where parents are calling us concerned about their children and asking how they can support them.
Thanks, Stevie. So as mentioned before, on Luna, teens can ask anonymous questions and get an expert-backed response. And today we've had over 85,000 questions asked to Luna, with questions around exams, secondary school, transitions to new schools coming up time and time again. So the three big buckets that we're going to dive into now is exam and homework pressure, that sense of being overwhelmed by the workload. The second is social struggles, so young people navigating friendships, falling out or trying to fit in. And then the third is that transition period. So moving schools, starting sixth form, and really figuring out how to look after themselves and manage to change through it all. So as you can see, it's not a small sample size, but it's a clear signal of what's on their minds. And more importantly, you know, where they're looking for help and support. So let's first look at the key themes and questions that are coming up around exam and homework pressure more closely, because this is a recurring thing that teens come to Luna for, especially now during exam season, although I believe we finish mostly A-levels and GCSEs. And when you read their actual words, so the questions that they send into Luna, you can really feel the weight of their worry. So on screen, you can see one teen writing, "How can I cope with exam stress? I'm feeling really overwhelmed." Another saying, "I just started year 7 and I have so much homework. I feel so overwhelmed and I don't know what to do." And a sixth former sharing that they've just started school and already feeling the pressure of the workload. Do you have any tips? I think what's worth noticing here is that this isn't just limited to GCSE or A-level crunch time. It starts early, sometimes as young as 11 years old. And those worries, those anxieties, they build. As parents, we acknowledge it can be hard to know when to step in because teens often don't tell us that they're struggling until they're really deep in it. And this is exactly the gap that Luna and YoungMinds is designed to fill. So Stevie, if you're a parent and you think that your young person might be dealing with some of the themes mentioned above, how can we help them manage the exams and homework pressures?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first things, and I think it is really important, whatever age your young person is, whether they're going to be starting secondary school, whether they're moving up through secondary school, heading to exams, is really establishing helpful routines and ways that they can schedule and manage their time. What we know is young people are often sitting multiple exams, lots of different subjects, and actually they don't have a lot of time. They don't have a lot of respite after school, and often it's the last thing that they really want to be doing. So actually, if we can better manage their time and plan for and factor in time that they're revising, completing their homework, but also making sure we're balancing that with time that they can spend with friends, you know, doing things at their leisure, things that they actually enjoy, then it creates that balance and reduces that level of conflict and upset if we feel that we're getting bogged down and overwhelmed by things like exam stress and having to do homework. So again, visual aids can be great, you know, whether you want to put that on the fridge, in their bedroom, they can tailor and personalise it to help them, but actually you could help provide that structure, making sure that there's real regular breaks, because our brains just can't absorb lots and lots of information at once. And also, as I said, making sure that we're factoring in time, maybe agreeing when actually we put pens, pencils, to close the laptop, to stop homework, of an evening. When is dinner time? When is our time to just relax and be? So again, sitting down together and co-creating and collaborating those ideas can feel really, really important. And often what we need to support young people with doing is, when they're met with all of these competing kinds of demands on their time, their worries, their stresses, is actually breaking things down and prioritizing. So actually, what is the next piece of homework that we need to submit, or what is the first exam that I'm going to be taking, and actually applying more time and focus on those things, and not feeling like we have to do everything all at once. So again, breaking things down in much more manageable chunks. In terms of dealing with homework, sometimes, and not just homework, but just anxiety and stresses in general, it can be sometimes really difficult for young people to put their finger on or really articulate why they're feeling anxious, why they're feeling so worried. So again, actually helping them to bring things to life a little bit more, maybe visually, like the anxiety iceberg, can really help them to start expressing their feelings, what those worries are, and preventing them from having to feel like they have to bottle them up or internalize them. So the anxiety iceberg is a really nice little activity. You can do it together, they could do it on their own, whatever you feel is best. But you get a big sheet of paper. You want to draw a big iceberg on that sheet of paper, and across it at some point you're going to draw that straight line. So anything below the waterline, they are what we call the underlying triggers, and that's really what we want to sort of uncover and identify and find out. But on the top is what we can see above that waterline, and they're the things that we're observing, what we're feeling, what we're seeing, maybe what we're hearing them say. So if you're doing it together, you could say, I'm wondering why you're feeling anxious. I've noticed that you feel that you're withdrawing. You're not as chatty at the dinner table anymore. You start to get quite agitated when we ask about school. And again, they can identify how that anxiety manifests within them. And then you can sit down and talk about, okay, what could be below the surface? What could be contributing? What are the times of the day? Are there any patterns that we can see? When do they feel better? When do they feel more stressed? And again, this can really help to piece that puzzle together to find out what's going on. And then you can present this to, places like schools, GPs, even other family members, just to help them better understand what's going on for your young person. And again, when there's lots of competition with our time and workload and pressures relating to that, sometimes journaling can be really, really helpful, especially if we're caught in that cycle of feeling worried and overwhelmed. And actually, sometimes that can be such a frustration for young people, because it can take actually time and energy away from them doing what they actually need to. So worry journaling is a great little technique, and they can use it at any time of day, as long as they've got a notebook or even access to maybe their smartphones. It's a way to contain those thoughts, those worries and anxieties, and it helps us to stop ruminating them and for them to constantly whirl around in our heads. So if we get it down on paper, or if we get it typed, again, we revisit that later on at a later date, maybe that evening, and we assess, did I need to be worried about that? We can myth bust a little bit. We can actually think, maybe if that happened again next time, this is what I would do. So again, that sense of containment can be so helpful when we feel like we need to get on with our days, but actually our thoughts, our stresses and anxiety are kind of blocking us and preventing us from doing that. Thanks, Jazz.
Amazing. Thank you, Stevie. Really, really good tips there. And I'm sure if anyone's got any questions around how to do them, or how to any apps or ideas which they can use, they can ask you in the Q&A later. Okay, so moving on to the next theme, it's social struggles. And this is a topic that we see time and time again. And in many ways, these are the hardest conversations for teens to have with the adults in their lives. There's lots of vulnerability involved, and at times them feeling that older people or adults just don't understand me, even though we've probably been through it before, when we were teenagers. So looking at the types of questions again that we're getting in, one teen wrote, "I'm starting at a new school and everyone seems to be clicking instantly. I try to socialize, but I don't think they see me as a close friend." So lots of questions around making new friends, and we're starting to see those themes actually really come in now as the term winds down and people start thinking about new year, new classes, and new schools. Another key theme we get in a lot is around changing friendship groups. So on the second bucket on the screen, you can see someone asking, "What do I do if I go to school one day and my whole friendship group isn't speaking to me without telling me why?" Again, we see these scenarios play out time and time again, and it's really, really sad to see young people worrying so much about these situations. And the third is around friendships and forgiveness. So a young person writing in to say, "I accidentally said something mean behind my friend's back. I've tried to apologize, but they didn't believe me." As you can see, these are real, very painful situations that can often be very draining to a young person and means that they're focusing a lot on these worries. And the fact that they're turning to Luna with these questions tells us something important, that they want to process these feelings, a bit like Stevie said before with the journaling. They just need a space where they feel safe to do it without judgment. So that's why it matters to give them somewhere to turn to. So, Stevie, what advice and tips do you have for parents going through this? I'm sure there are many parents on the call worrying about their young person's friendships. Any thoughts and advice to parents supporting a young person?
Absolutely. So it can be so tough. And often, particularly when there's lots of anxiety around new school environments, am I going to fit in? Am I going to belong? And actually, young people can put an enormous amount of pressure on themselves to make friends, but also to maintain those friendships. And sometimes that we need time to be able to find our people who we really click with, who we connect with, and who we, really kind of gel with. But sometimes that can feel, really, really daunting when you're starting a new school. So firstly, it can be really helpful, I think, when we're thinking about those transitions, maybe from primary to secondary or to sixth form, college, whatever that looks like. It can be really helpful to plan and prepare and take away as many of those unknowns as possible when we're starting in that new environment. So we know that we're not going to be able to know everything. We know that there are going to be surprises and things that throw a few curveballs our way. But we can do things, particularly over the summer holidays, that can prepare our young people to make that kind of next step. So it could be things as simple as feeling more settled about trying on their uniform and feeling more comfortable in it and finding, the right shoes and actually, just giving a bit of a boost, a bit of self-esteem rather than leaving that till last minute. It could be that we make those journeys to the new school environment, wherever that is. So actually that doesn't feel as worrying. We know what time we need to leave the house, what time train or bus I need to get. And also similarly with making friends. Sometimes there are some groups or forums or especially if you're going to maybe college and things like that. These can pop up in advance of actually going to the school, or maybe even things like universities, you see this a lot. So actually trying to tap in, connect, are there any groups that are existing? Are there any friends that are actually making that transition with them? Can they do a bit more with those friendships across the summer? But also sitting down and being really realistic about actually what are the things that are the unknowns and actually what can make them feel better. And it could be that actually in their opening days at their new school, they just want to know actually how to get to the reception area, or they want to be able to find their classroom. Actually, is there anything that we can ask their school to provide? Have they got a map of the school, the layout? Do they know who their head of year is going to be? Do they know any of their teachers? Is there anything that we can do to bridge that gap? Changing friendship groups is really, really challenging, but it's something that happens a lot during adolescence because we change a lot. We might express ourselves differently. We might find like new interests in music or things like that. So again, actually our friendships can feel quite fluid. They can go up and down. We might be friends with, people really closely at one stage and not so. We might come back together, we might not. So there's a lot of ups and downs. And I think young people can really struggle with their self-esteem, because if they become more distant or grow apart from their friends, they might internalize that and think, is there something wrong with me? Am I to blame? Why does nobody want to be friends with me? So again, I think it's really important through those teenage years that we actually pick young people up, we give them a boost, and we reinforce actually what all of the great stuff is about them. So a really lovely technique that you might want to introduce with your young people is a little positive affirmation jar. So you can get an old jam, pickle, whatever kind of jar, and you can invite, obviously yourself, but anyone else, maybe friends, families, to write down positive little messages. And again, this can be stored in their bedroom, and they can tap into it on days where they're just having maybe an off day, when they're feeling quite low, when they're questioning themselves, maybe when they're questioning what's happening with their friendship group. They can actually come back and realize, actually, who is there for me, who loves me unconditionally, and actually who doesn't like a little pick me up message. So again, that could be a really great way to maintain their self-esteem when it gets knocked through various different challenges during the teenage years. And again, it's very typical and expected, and actually it's really healthy and important that we make mistakes with friends in our relationships, and that actually we grow and learn from them. And again, it's really recognizing and being honest and open that trust can be broken if we make mistakes. It can take time to heal, but actually parents and carers can have a great role in these situations, because you can actually model or share your lived experiences of maybe when you was growing up, when you've maybe had a similar situation with a friend or a family member, what actually really helped you get through that time, what helped you maybe own up to that mistake or take accountability for it, what helped you make amends. And again, it helps them feel much less isolated and focusing on all of the things that they might not have done right. And it actually can show things can get better, and sharing that kind of lived experience can really help young people to do that.
Amazing. Thanks, Stevie. Okay, so our last theme or a bucket of questions really is around moving schools or into college or 16 plus education. And I think this is often super underestimated. We maybe think of transitions as exciting milestones, but for many teens and young people, there's a lot of anxiety around it. We're already getting questions in on Luna around the move from primary to secondary school. We're getting a lot of questions around scared about not fitting in and whether people have to change themselves in order to be liked by other people, which is obviously really, really sad when we see that. We are getting also questions in from the older teens around moving schools for sixth form or college. So on the screen, someone say, I've moved a new school and I really miss my old teachers. I think connections to old teachers come up time and time again. And then, the last bucket is really to do with like mental health and burnout. So I know that during the school year, things can get very busy and I usually end up burnt out. How do I look after myself, my mental health and my physical health? And I think that the summer is very much a reset period, and that young people are often trying to improve their habits from the previous year, and looking to balance their mental health as much as possible. So I guess, Stevie, with the school year ending and the new school year approaching, what can parents do again over the summer to reassure their young people about these transitions and to support them also when the new school term begins?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, starting secondary school is such a big move, is such a big step for young people. There are so many questions and often, those lack of answers, what we were talking about earlier, when we're trying to remove the unknowns, make it as familiar and as comfortable as possible. But I think, again, it's also really important to have these conversations around actually being realistic, around how things might not fall into place straight away. They might feel quite rocky. It might take time to bed in. So really trying to avoid putting too much pressure on themselves to really get it right, to make friends, to really get stuck into their work. There's often a lot to grasp and grapple with. So again, just being kind and trying as parents and carers, again, maybe thinking ahead, and actually over those first few weeks it can be really turbulent. So again, being mindful of your availability. Can you be a bit more available in the evenings, weekends? Can you plan to do some fun things that are just a bit of a distraction? Could you maybe suggest, and again, asking your young person as well, what would they like to see on those first few weeks of term when they're settling in? Do they need you to be around more? Do they want you to maybe go for a walk with them? Do they want you to cook their favourite meal when they get home on their first day? Whatever it looks like, I think actually the best thing we can do, and sometimes we don't do it enough, is actually ask young people directly what could help and benefit them. So I would definitely suggest building those plans, but also building in that time to be together, to be a bit more distracted, especially if things are a bit rocky and not going so well. They can have in their back of their minds, actually, at the weekend, we're going to do this, and I'm really looking forward to that. So again, I think just trying to think about what those first few weeks particularly look like. Again, when we think about moving schools, going to sixth form, college, whatever that is, often it feels like a loss, and we might be leaving behind, friends, teachers, as one of those insights shared. We might really miss just being in that kind of environment. It might mean a completely new location for us. So again, it can feel like a real loss. And actually, it's really important that we recognise that and actually have conversations around that, but also find ways that actually young people can maybe hold on to those memories that they've created in their previous school. I know this is something that has benefited me massively growing up, but actually creating those memory books, boxes, whatever that looks like, so that actually if they're having days where they're feeling a bit low, or they're reminiscing about the past, or actually they want to feel a bit more connected when they're feeling a bit unsteady throughout this transition, it's something that they can just go back, revisit, have a flick through, gives them a bit of a pick me up, a bit of a smile, and remembers those kinds of good times. So it's really important to recognise that the loss, the feelings around that, what can we do to kind of really mark the occasion, but also really important to not dismiss those worries and anxieties, but also try and balance it with conversations around actually what are the new opportunities that this is going to bring? What are they kind of looking forward to? What are those positive things that we can really hook on? It might be something really small that they can think of, but actually, if we really work, nurture that, harness that a bit more, that can be a real kind of gateway for them to feeling more settled into their new environments. And again, I think neglecting ourselves, our mental health, when things get busy, is often one of the first things that's kind of stopped, paused, and shoved to one side. And absolutely, life can get busy. And the reality is, as we grow up, that's going to maintain and stay the same when we, are working, when we want to see family and friends and being social, when we've got other commitments. So again, it's important to try and stay really boundaried. And again, I always come back to, if you can model this to your young people too, and they see you do this, they're much more likely to reenact it. And all we're asking is that maybe 5 to 10 minutes a day to do something for ourselves, whether that's sitting down, reading a book, putting on our favourite playlist, doing a bit of mindfulness, colouring, actually walking on the grass, feeling, different textures underneath our feet. Again, it can be really personal, but it's thinking about actually how can we integrate these little pockets of self-care in our everyday routines? Because if we perceive it as something as we need to really add on and make loads of time for, the reality is we probably won't do it. So can we be a bit more savvy? Are there things that we can do during those maybe more mundane parts of the day, when we're traveling to and from work or school? So actually we can do something, and it's a bit like a 2-in-1. We're still doing what we need to do, but actually we're doing things that are really promoting and boosting our overall well-being and mental health too.
Amazing. Thank you, Stevie. And I think we can all use some of those tips, those tips there personally as well. Cool. So over to you, I think.
Perfect. So we've covered various different themes today. However, we've only really scratched the surface, and we know that absolutely every young person is different. You know, they might present symptoms, worries, anxiety quite different. They might actually respond to different techniques and strategies differently. So again, that's where I'd really encourage anyone on the call today, or even someone you know, if they have a young person that's struggling with their mental health, our parent helpline is really here for you and them. And so in terms of what we offer, our service is from 0 to 25. So we're really intentional about that big age remit so that we cover those big milestones and transitions like we're talking about, but also really regard young people as they enter, you know, kind of adulthood, world of work, independence too. We're a free and confidential service. We're available across the UK. And we are able to offer, you know, practical tips, guidance, actual things that you can implement at home. We also can sort of give quite a lot of coaching and help give information around how do you navigate services and support, and actually give you signposting to other organisations. That might be charity, might be local services, it might be sort of statutory organisations as well, to let you know that you're not alone and there's a real support network around you. And it's really important to say that we're also here for main carers too. So whether you be a kinship carer, you might be a legal guardian, you might be an adoptive or foster parent, you might be a grandparent or sibling. Essentially, if you've got a young person in your life and you're able to implement some of the advice and guidance that we can give, we are absolutely here for you. And our advisors are exceptionally trained and experienced in supporting carers as well as parents too.
I think just to wrap up from a team perspective, today 1 in 2 young people are going online for health and wellbeing information before speaking to a parent or a carer about mental health and wellbeing. And when we dug a bit deeper into this to ask them why they're going online first, a lot of them are telling us it's because it's anonymous, it's because it's judgment free, it's easy to express themselves, and it feels like a safe space for them. And yeah, they really are going online for advice, for validation and support, but also to see what other people are asking about and to realise that they're not alone and not the only ones. But unfortunately, like the advice that they sometimes can get online from peers or creators or influencers isn't always trustworthy. And again, I just think that's why resources like YoungMinds and Luna and other mental health platforms are really, really important out there. So if you think that your young person could have some value from Luna, you know, to have their questions answered safely and anonymously, to get trusted answers and to be supported on a wide range of topics growing up, then yeah, Luna is definitely something we'd love you to explore. We are not here to replace parents at all. In fact, we're here very much to encourage and to help young people to open up and to have those conversations with trusted adults. Today, we have more than 250,000 families worldwide using Luna as a companion in their family household. We're really proud of the reviews that we've got on the App Store from young people and parents alike. And so if you think that your teen might benefit from a resource like Luna, then today we're offering an exclusive 25% off the Luna Premium package. There is a free layer there. But if you'd like to upgrade your young person to unlimited Luna, 25% off takes the price down to £2.49 a month, which gives them unlimited access to tools and resources to help them navigate school with confidence. We'll send everything in a follow-up email, or you can obviously scan the QR code now, select the annual plan and enter the discount code, which is support25. But otherwise, I'm really excited to dig into the Q&A now. Hopefully, you've had time to think about your questions. As I said before, please feel free to submit them in the chat. And I'm going to stop screen sharing now. Let me do this and have a look at what is in the chat. Great. So, okay, so we've got one question in right now, which says, my teens want to be on screens a lot and don't agree with us. That's important to have screen-free time for their mental health focus and real-life connections. Do you have any suggestions on how to strike a good balance? I think this is such a great question, Stevie, especially with the social media ban announcement last week as well. So thank you very much to the parent who asked this. Any thoughts, Stevie?
Yeah, such a great question. It's something we're asked an awful lot on webinars like this, but also on the helpline. So I think it's really important with parents and carers that we approach things with a layer of curiosity. Now, it's absolutely well within your right to want boundaries, to have that balance, and that is what we want to get to, and that's the end goal. But if we meet it with, social media use with lots of criticism, not really understanding what they like about the platforms, it can just create resistance. It can create that conflict. You don't understand me, and those kinds of situations, which just makes it a lot more difficult, I guess, to reach a bit more of a compromise. So I think I always suggest to parents and carers, even if you've got your own opinions and you're more than entitled to that, try to be open-minded, try to approach with curiosity. Understand actually what are they using their devices for, what apps do they enjoy, what are they getting out from it, because actually that could help you to think about, okay, when I'm encouraging my young person not to be on screen and they particularly enjoyed this, how can we replicate that in real life that's a device-free version, for instance? And it may be that they love to play games, and actually that's something you can maybe look at as a family and do, but as board games or card games, whatever that might look like. So again, it's being curious about that. I think again what I said before, if they see us doom scrolling on our phones a lot, they might argue, actually, why do I have to be off my screen? So actually it can be quite helpful as a family